All right. Hey, everybody. It is Sunday night, time for another live show. And I'm so excited because on tonight's show, I have Ken Somerville from It's All About the Biology. And he's got a really great story. Whoopsie. Oh, hold on. Sorry, I was streaming on another tab. Um, so Ken's laughing. He's like, I heard that feedback. So he's got a great story, and we're gonna dive into it because I always love, you guys know, whenever I have guests on, I want to know what they know, but I love their story and the journey that got them to where they're at, because I feel like that really helps people like me and you to connect with them and their message and what their full mission is. So without further ado, we're going to welcome you guys in, but I'm going to bring Ken up to say hello, and then we'll start welcoming you guys in, and then we'll get the party started. All right, so here we go. Welcome, Ken, to the stage.
Like get the party started. Yeah.
I feel like we need some music for that, right?
Yep.
We could do that on the Friday show when I join your show on Friday, right? We do a Friday.
I do have a little intro with a little music.
Okay.
So yeah.
Yep. Okay, good. All right. I get to dance and maybe have a glass of wine on a Friday night while we chit chat.
Exactly. Then I get to interview you and find out your story. You're here to find out mine. So
great. This is so perfect. This will be wonderful. So we'll bring everything full circle for you guys. So we have Silly Lily in the house, and that is Ken's wife. So everybody say hi to Ken's wife, Silly Lily. Thank you for being here. I'm sure though you probably don't have to really twist her arm to be here for you though, right?
No. We've been together for more than 30 years now, and we still blow kisses at each other and hold hands, and generally it's a kiss off, mind you, but we still blow kisses.
Do you guys have kids?
Fur kids.
Fur kids. Okay. Yep. So fur babies. Yep. So I think also health and wellness translates to our fur babies as well. So
yeah,
that's something too. I think, oh my gosh, I could go so deep into all the horror stories I hear my patients with what they do, how they are guided to do things with their animals. And I'm like, no, they're just little mammals with fur on them. They're
exactly,
you know, and their biology is the same. How about we just tie that in there, loop that in?
Exactly. Well, it is all about the biology, but it doesn't matter if it's a human being, whether it's your pet, or whether it's a plant or just the native environment, the air you breathe, it's all full of biology. Life wouldn't exist on our planet without the biology creating the cells.
It's amazing. I'm so excited to go into that about the cellular piece of it, because when I'm working with my patients and I start talking about the cell, sometimes they glaze over a little bit. But I think people really need to understand that we're just a blob of trillions and trillions and trillions of tiny little cells that we can't see. And that each one of those little cells is an engine that runs your life. And there's things that we can do that if we put good oil in, they work great. If we don't, they don't. So, radiator fluid, or you let it go dry. It's really so parallel when we talk about the cell, and then the soil health. I mean, all of it. So like we have Penny Pebbler Ripplers. Thanks for being here, Penny. Appreciate you. We got Mad Dog. We have P Squared in the house, and Idaho Garden Girl. Thanks so much for being here. Saying hello to our guest, Ken. We have Hunt Balu. Thank you so much for being here. Idaho Garden Girl always likes to tell me she likes to try to jump in ahead of time. So she's like number 4, she says. So, and then Ian E. Cannon. Am I saying that right? Frequency, energy, vibration. Yes.
Nikola Tesla.
What's that?
Nikola Tesla.
Yes, exactly. Yeah, it's so perfect. And that's what we are. Everything is a frequency. So, hey, Laura Larson's in the house. Thanks for coming in. Everybody say hi to our guest, Ken. Ken is with us from It's All About the Biology. And so I will say ahead of time, and then I'll remind you, and then I will remind you again at the end, that all the ways to connect with Ken are in the show notes. So make sure you connect with him there. So, and also please, when you come in, hit that like and subscribe button. I know Ken and I are both working on growth and getting our messages out. So the more support we have, and if you could take this video and share it, then we can get more eyeballs on what it really means to be healthy from the soil to the cell to the human frame. So we have Uncle Al in the house, and yeah, this is great. Good. Come on in, everybody. Hit that thumbs up, share it out. So I think without further ado, let's get the party started. What do you think, Ken?
Let's party, baby.
Party, let's do it. So Ken has this channel. It's all about the biology, and I thought it was just really interesting because he goes in depth. I mean, he goes in so many. There's so many, maybe strategic. I don't know if that's the right word, but in so many different places to really help us understand from the soil to the cell how it affects our health as humans. So and before we get into how he got into that, because I think it's fascinating. I think soil health is fascinating. But I do want to go back and say, what's your story, Ken? What the heck happened? How'd you get here?
Oh my goodness gracious. Let's see. 15 years ago, I had a duodenal ulcer burst. And that's right at where your gastrointestine meets your stomach. And that almost killed me. But in doing that, I got so sick that I had to spend almost 3 years in recovery and a second surgery that almost killed me again.
Gosh.
But in that time, it gave me the chance to slow down and learn. And I've always been fascinated with knowledge and understanding. I'm that 5-year-old that everybody just hates because you keep going, why? 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 That's me. I want to understand it because it's not just about, okay, do this and do this. No, it's why am I doing it this way? And is there a better way to do it? So I've been inquisitive all my life. And because of the injuries, the accidents that I had, I finally took out my back. I burst nerves out the side of my spine. So I'm basically, they wrote me off on that broken cog in the wheel and they just tossed out the cog. But I found that the medication I was on was basically leaving me in a fog. I was on muscle relaxants so heavy that I wasn't sure if I was awake or asleep most of the time.
That's
In order to
crazy.
get off of that, because what was happening is around where the nerves had popped, the muscles there would just start to tense up until they finally cramped. And if you ever had a leg cramp, well, have that in your back, but it's not just the one muscle. The one beside it would get pulled on, and all of a sudden that would cramp, and the next one would cramp. I'd end up literally with my muscles bouncing on my back, laying on the floor, just praying that it would stop, that I could actually breathe again. And I remembered back in my youth, back in the early 80s, I played a lot of sports, etc. And back then, we would go out and we would buy some cannabis and smoke the cannabis, as kids did in the 80s. But I always remembered that if I had a muscle strain, if I pulled a ligament or anything like that, that would give me relief. So after injuring my back, I went and I found a buddy of mine that had some, and I consumed some, and all of a sudden I could actually move a little bit better. So I went down a rabbit hole because, like, in Canada, cannabis is legal. I applied for a license for myself to grow, a medical license through Health Canada. I received that actually the same month Canada went legal. I received my grow ticket that I could legally grow anyway.
Convenient.
When I got into that, I wanted to grow healthy. I wanted it to be the best for my body, whether it was lettuce, tomatoes, or cannabis. if I'm consuming it, I want it to be as healthy as I could make it. And that sent me on this journey into understanding living soil. And I started listening to doctors and scientific podcasts and presentations after presentation. And I slowly gathered enough information where I could literally, I've grown a 1 ounce bud of cannabis. Most people would never see one, and I had a 1 inch dried one. That's how good I got at growing cannabis. But it was in the use of it, where I don't smoke it very, very rarely. I actually grind it down and I eat it. Okay. So I'm getting the result that I wanted, which was my muscles would not cramp anymore, which is, believe me, when you can actually stretch and take a full breath and not have to go, okay, am I stretching just too far? It's such a relief, just such a relief. And
It's
I'm sure,
stressful.
Paula, you get this all the time in what you do, because you give people that kind of a relief. And it's just an amazing feeling to be able to look in the mirror and go, thank you. And I want to thank you, Paula, for what you do, because you're giving other people that joy and return back to life. Because for me, that's what it was. I got my life back.
Wow. Well, thank you. And that it really is. This is, I firmly believe, and I've had people say, I don't believe in chiropractors. And I will say, I don't care what you believe. Come and sit in my office for 2 hours and watch the miracles and
Yeah.
watch how I change effing lives. Like that is just the bottom line. So
Mhm.
believe it or not, that's what we do. And it's interesting what you were saying about the nerves in your back and the muscles spasming,
Mhm.
because so many people will say, oh, I pulled a muscle, or it's just a muscle spasm. But when you injure those nerves, that spasm, the nerves are telling just exactly what you said. The nerves are telling the muscles to tighten up because there's an injury at the spinal level. And so the only way to keep you from getting hurt further is for your nerves to say, hey, we need you guys on deck. We need you to tighten up, splint this area so this guy doesn't move and kill us. So
Mhm.
it's really, whenever anybody says I just pulled a muscle, and you can pull a muscle,
Yeah.
but most of the time it's far more than a pulled muscle, and too many people are ignoring things that you didn't. So and I love how you figured out, like, or I guess actually, why did you figure out, or how did you figure out that eating it was more beneficial than smoking, or did you just not want to ingest the smoke?
Um, a little of both. It's just I don't need to get high. Like, I don't need the psychedelic effect or that part of the cannabis as much as just the pain relief. Because I've been able to get off the muscle relaxants, all the painkillers, everything, and just be using the cannabis. And I don't need to be high. I got lots of that back in the 80s, and I still do once in a while now. But now, have you ever heard of the endocannabinoid system?
Of course, yeah.
Okay, so for me, I'm putting so many cannabinoids into the receptors in my endocannabinoid system for me to consume it in smoke. There's not a lot left there for the smoke to affect. So it takes a very potent cannabis for me to feel those now, because of how I consume, and I'm blocking up those receptors. And face it, anybody that's eating chocolate, you're actually creating THC in your body. It's part of the natural cycle
Mhm.
of how things work in our bodies. And the endocannabinoid system is so phenomenal and covers everything in our bodies. Um, there's so many different cannabinoids we can use, not just in the cannabis plant, but in plants that are out there that we would never think of considering. Most of them we call weeds. I like to refer to them more as medicinal plants for the soil, because the same plants that we use medically, in herbalism, are generally the plants that we're calling weeds, and the benefit they have for our bodies, they also have for the soil, whether that's calcium, magnesium, all the different compounds that are available in those types of plants.
It's there's so much in what you just said. So I should be taking notes. Um, so I might have to ask the multiple questions so we don't forget. But okay, that's fascinating. So I know about the endocannabinoid system. I don't
Mhm.
know. I don't know the difference in how ingesting is different from smoking. So are you saying that you can ingest less and
Mhm.
affect more receptors than if you smoked it? Is that the concept there?
Basically, yes. When you're smoking it, you're getting more of a specific set of cannabinoids from consuming it. When I take my plant and I powder the entire plant, right? I'm getting the whole plant medicine. So I'm not just getting a small amount of anything. I'm getting the synergistic relationship from everything that's in the plant. So I'm getting CBD, I'm getting CBG, CBN, THC, etc. So it's more of a broad spectrum, and that's allowed me to get all the benefits from the different components that are in the entire plant than only specifically focusing on the THC.
And so all those other things are destroyed when you burn it?
Um, Basically, when you're burning it, you're just focusing on the THC. The
Okay.
the CBD, the CBN, the CBG, they all vaporize at different temperatures. So some you're vaporizing before you've actually consumed it. Others you haven't reached the temperature where you're activating those particular molecules. That's where like I pressure cook my cannabis to take it from just the green plant material and activate the cannabinoids in it. So we'll use THCA as the example. The acid molecule, cannot be there for you to get the effect that you want from THC. When you burn it, you're burning off that acid molecule. So when I'm pressure cooking it, I bring it up to such a temperature where I'm volatilizing those molecules, and I'm activating the CBD molecules, which are actually at a higher temperature or a longer cook rate. But because I'm using a pressurized jar, they all actually form back in to their component parts, although the A molecule is volatilized off, but I'm still getting the THC as well as the CBD and all the other cannabinoids that are available in the plant that I grew.
That is okay, that's fascinating. And then um okay, now forgive my ignorance because I so I had a very short stint, again going back to the 80s,
Mhm.
with weed. It does not like me. It is like I get nauseated just
Yep.
thinking about, right? And then did some genetic testing years ago, and come to find out I cannot process, I cannot metabolize the THC and this form of cannabinoid in my body. My
Mhm.
genetics don't allow for it. Which then, of course, I always tell my daughter, "You have my genetics, so can you just like be careful, please." That hasn't stopped her. But anyway, so so I find this interesting. So your wife, Silly Lily, says smoking goes through the lungs, consuming goes through the
Mhm.
liver. So
Yep.
and that's how anything is. If everything gets metabolized very differently in the body.
Mhm.
So whether it's, and this is why when we talk about oh gosh, I had a conversation. We here in Michigan, we have to go and speak to a healthcare professional at the health department to get a vaccine waiver for our kids if we're not going to give them vaccines. And so
Right.
I was having a conversation with the nurse who was telling me that I don't know what I'm talking about. So you can tell I'm like really,
Yeah.
and I said, well, part of the problem is that it's stabilized with formaldehyde, and you're going to inject that directly into my system. And she says, well, formaldehyde's naturally occurring in the body. And I go, yeah, as a metabolic byproduct, not as a complete full-on injection into the body. So things are metabolized differently for a reason. And so I go back to what your wife is saying about how, when it goes through the lungs or it goes through the liver, it gets metabolized very differently. So why, and this is where I started by saying, forgive my ignorance, why do you not, does no one get high when they ingest it? Or is it the dosing, or like
It's the
how
dosing.
doesn't that happen?
It's the dosing. Like if anybody wants to try anything, whether it's cannabis, whether it's anything else, whether it's reishi mushrooms, you can have an effect, and that's a non-psychoactive mushroom. Start small, okay? Start very low and slow. The idea is by doing that, you're starting and building up to the point where you do start to feel that kind of of an effect, and then you can back off from there. Or if you still are in a lot of pain, you might have to push that and have those side effects, but they're not as intense generally as when you smoke it. And a lot of the thing with smoking, there's so many different strains of cannabis, just like there's different strains of tomatoes. Each one is a little bit different. Some have a different effect than others. Some will make you tired, some will make you happy, some will make you so full of energy you just want to go out and dance all night. It's all in the particular set of cannabinoids that are inside of that plant that you're consuming. And that comes down to the biology that grew the plant, as well as the strain of plant, because you're going to get a different level of intensity, because the molecules that have been put together by the biology in the plant are going to be more intense. They're going to have every single component available to make up that trichome in the plant. And if it doesn't have the right components available, then it'll skip components. Just like if you're skipping your lettuce in your meal or something else, you're skipping the 2x4s in your house, your wall's going to fall down. It's having all those components available in what you're consuming. For us, of course, it's our gut biology that breaks down what we consume to feed to our biology that creates the cells in our bodies. In the plants, it's the same way. And that's where the different growth methods are very important when we're growing plants as well as ourselves.
So are you growing your own plants or no?
I do. I've stopped right now because I still have several pounds of cannabis. I got so good at growing that I grew so much that I don't consume as much as I have on stock. So it costs money to grow, especially in Canada. We're not growing outside. I have an enclosed environment that I use, so I'm paying the
That's
power
pretty
for
common, isn't
heating.
it?
Pardon me?
That's pretty common, isn't it? A more controlled indoor environment.
Yes, yeah,
Okay.
especially for cannabis.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of high value crops like poinsettias. They have hundreds of acres in Holland under greenhouses that they grow poinsettias in. You can't even get into their building without decontamination, wearing special clothing. Their margins are so, narrow that they can't afford to have a bug get in or a virus get in to hurt their poinsettias, or they'd lose the whole farm.
Yeah, it's really amazing when we think about how delicate, I guess, or sensitive some of
Mhm.
these plants are. I personally like things that aren't as temperamental. So it's a
Are
little
you
bit
like me,
easier.
the lazy gardener?
I'm the lazy gardener, Ken.
Yep.
And I'll tell you, I was thinking about you because I wanted to ask this question. I was listening to your interview with Joe from Garden State Gardener,
Mhm.
and I was like, oh my gosh, I have to have this conversation as well with regards to soil. So I think, because if we springboard now, because you were talking about how the soil affects each different plant, but you've got to have all these components. And of course,
Mhm.
I'm always talking about the perfect lawn. I have the perfect lawn, Ken. I have dandelions and chickweed and plantain and
Mhm.
clover and violet. Like I have everything in my lawn. That is the perfect lawn. But I have neighbors who think they have the perfect lawn because they spray and they only have one kind of grass. And
Mhm.
I'm like, that's not perfect, right? That's not diversity. So I also was testing a particular area in my yard because I've been wanting to grow blueberries for many years
Mhm.
and couldn't figure out. I plant them in the same spot. Finally, I was like, I should test it. So the soil came back. It was testing at, I think it was like 7.5 or 8 pH. And I was
Yep.
like, whoa, I wasn't expecting it to be that high. So we have this, actually, I'm not going to call out the store because they're a really popular store and they have a lot of other great things. But I thought, oh, I'm going to take the soil and have it tested there. So they give me the piece of paper, and I said, okay, and I'm thinking, oh, I think as far as I knew, the fastest way to drop the pH is with sulfur. And so I asked them, I said, what's the fastest way to drop the pH? Thinking that they might tell me something better than sulfur. I don't know.
Yep.
And she said, oh, you need calcium. And I go, you realize calcium's still pretty alkaline, right? And she goes, well, no, that's what you should put on there. And I go, I think I need sulfur. So, um, so what was interesting was, so I got the sulfur, and I was like, okay, these master gardeners do not know what they're talking about. So I get the sulfur and I bring it home, and that particular garden grows. Oh my gosh, I grow nettle like you want nettle. I grow nettle like nobody's business, and it's kind of my nemesis. Like I have no desire to even harvest it because I'm like, you need to get out of my garden. Like enough of you. So I put the sulfur, and then a few weeks later, I noticed there was no stinging nettle. So to specify, there was no stinging nettle growing.
Mhm.
But now I have this. It's this huge lush carpet of this. I think it's called purple dead nettle. So
Yep.
so it has little purple tops on it, but doesn't have the stinging, the poison toxin in it. And I thought, wow, I lowered the pH I didn't have it retested, so I don't know where it's sitting right now. Oh, and sidebar, my blueberries are in a bucket with high quality soil, and and I'm getting blueberries, and I'm going to leave them in pots for now until I can figure that out. But I thought that was really interesting by just shifting the pH of the
Mhm.
soil, how something else wants to grow. And it came through with a vengeance. So do we do ourselves a disservice when where's that balance in trying to figure out, should I just left it at 7.5 and grew in there what would like a 7.5? Or when you're amending soil, like can you actually cause an overgrowth of certain plants? So I really wanted your insight on that. As we're talking about soil health, how much messing with is too much, I guess, is the final question.
Well, as my one of my hosts on our network, the Soil Matters show, is fond of saying, "Don't be a moron. Less is more." So, in whatever you're going to do, don't go overboard with it. You have to consider a lot of these components that people are putting on. They're putting way, way, way more than what's necessary, and they're causing an imbalance in the soil structure, which causes an imbalance in the biology that can exist in that soil structure. And what you found when you put that on, that the one nettle's still there, the other's not. If you looked and did a little bit of research on the difference between the two, you would see that the one probably is putting something into the soil that the other isn't.
And
You
I
remember
found that
what?
fascinating when you were saying that. I mean, I know certain plants leave nutrients, like it's that cycle.
Mhm.
But
All
I was like,
plants.
oh, what's that?
All plants.
All plants, yeah.
Yep.
And so I never I knew, yeah, well, all plants. In my mind, I was like, oh, I gotta plant this to get this nutrient. But then, like you're saying, I mean, even just observing and going, okay, what does this soil need that
Mhm.
that this plant is growing, right? Is this how we're like it's just a different way of thinking. And I think it's really fascinating.
Medicinal plants for the soil. That's the stinging nettle. That's the different nettles, etc., that you have growing in your soil structure. Your soil is saying it needs to have what that plant brings to the situation. Dandelions, calcium. You have impacted soil. That's what you're looking at when you see dandelions. What am I lacking? And that's why I don't like the term weeds anymore. I would rather use medicinal plants for the soil. People understand that a little bit more, but just doing a little bit of basic research on the plants that are growing, you can understand what's missing in your soil. Mother Nature, when she goes to germinate a seed, it has to have a very specific atmosphere, the right moisture, the right biology, etc., there for that seed to germinate. And once the seed germinates, it actually sprays out biology that's been stored inside and outside of that seed that was there from the mother plant, and it's actually going to create um, the field around it, that the biology that it wants to have is there right away. Now, if there's good biology there, then the biology from the seed is going to join up, it's going to intermingle and go party time. And if it's not, if there's a lot of problems with the soil, that's when you have the difference struggling for what the plant needs to grow. Most people, they need organic material. They're lacking organic material in their soil. A lot of our soils have less than 1%, and it would be better if you had 10 plus percent organic material in your soil. That's where your biology is going to live, and it's going to break down those materials, and it's going to reuse those materials to make more biology and to make the plant itself.
That's yeah, it's like I feel like I need a whiteboard, but I get it. And so again, like I think the way I had been thinking about this, and I don't know if people out there think about this, is putting plants in based on what
Mhm.
you think your soil needs versus looking at why certain plants are there, reading the basically reading the room. Why
Yep.
is this plant growing? Why do I get lamb's quarter? Again, I grow lamb's quarter like a champ. I mean, amazing. But and I don't, funny thing is, I don't get a, I wish I got more chickweed because I love chickweed. It's a great tea and it's an incredible medicinal plant, as you know. But so now I'm starting to think, why don't I grow more chickweed? What's going on in my soil that I'm growing, that the nettle wants to be there and the lamb's quarter wants to be there? Like what are those telling the soil? Do you have the answer for that, or is that, do I have to look that up?
That's a little bit beyond my poor pea brain. Now, Andy Lopez, who's been a gardener and gardening since back in the mid 60s, he'd probably be able to answer you that one. But I think one of the components that a lot of people are missing is sand. A little bit of sand in your soil. I know we have for the indoor growers a mix that's or a setup called the horizontal soil system. This is something that Leighton Morrison put together years and years back. He creates soil systems, and It's basically the one mixture of sand, silt, clay, and organic material. And that is necessary for the different layers of biology. The sand has so much of the compounds necessary to grow plants. And 1 grain of sand is like Mount Everest or even a planetoid for the biology, considering how small the biology is. They set up on there, they mine those to get calcium out of it, to get magnesium, phosphorus, etc., out of that grain of sand. So if you take and not playground sand, you don't want wash sand, you want a natural sand, different colors of sand, etc., but just spread that out like you would be spreading grass seed, and you're going to start to give those components into the soil that might not be there in your particular soil. And that's where we talk a little bit about terroir, which is French word for in your environment. So you have a very specific environment in your backyard, a very specific climate in your backyard that you can change by planting a hedge. You can get a microclimate behind that hedge. So it's all of these components that are necessary to have available. But the biggest thing, you can have everything in your soil you would ever think of, plus throw 20 kitchen sinks in there. But if you don't have the biology that actually breaks that down and uses it, you have nothing.
Is it so the biology itself, is there one perfect biology, or is it just what it's perfect for whatever is growing and whatever needs to grow? And is there a bad biology? Like if we springboard that to humans and our microbiome, where would you land on the, I mean, I guess we could talk about conventional farming and GMOs and that kind of thing. So maybe springboard us into that. Like how is that kind of biology affecting us? So go from the soil.
Mhm.
What's the more perfect scenario, and then how are we screwing it up as humans in our big ag?
Well, it's actually very simple. Like there's no specific biology that's good or bad. Biology changes. We had Dr. James White on. He talked about something called horizontal gene transfer, and that's when biology that's in close proximity to itself literally can rewrite its genetic code and make itself into something else. So they've started, instead of getting way down deep, they're starting to look at the family groups of biology. So you've got bacterial and fungal are your main groups. The bacterial is more of your younger biology. The fungi is more the older biology on our planet. But you need everything in a soil system. You need the bacteria, you need the fungi. And if you consider how nature and our planet was developed, we came from an aquatic, the physical forms that we possess came out of the aquatic and were slowly built up over time. The soil biology is partially aquatic biology that lives in the soil, that lives in the air, and there's different levels in us as well as in our soils where there's aerobic biology, stuff that loves oxygen, can exist in oxygen state. Then there's a biology that's a transitional. It can move up into oxygen state and it can move into an aerobic state. And then you have your straight aerobic bacteria and biology that can't really exist in that oxygenated level. So for the human body, we're going to get the bulk of our biology from what we're consuming, whether that's plant or animal, is getting their biology from what they're consuming, which is for cows going to be grass or grains, etc. For the plant, what's in the soil itself. So it all literally starts in the soil with what's being grown consumed by the next layer of biology. And that's where I talk about predator prey. If you have a lot of prey species, but very little predator, then the prey is going to get overwhelming and overwhelming until there's enough of the next prey species to knock it down to get balance. Everything's about balance, but at the same time, if your prey eats too much of the predator species and wipes them out, well, then the prey dies off. If there's something in our soils that are missing, it's part of that predator prey model, and you can get into real trouble real fast if you don't try to have a multi-dimensional, more biodiverse ecosystem, whether that's in our bodies or in our soils or in our animals. But it all starts within that soil structure, because that's where our animals are eating from and where we're eating from.
That's so perfect. And looking at human health, my my first focus, I guess, and teaching on this channel is I approach it from human health and the human frame, and how do we improve human health, and what is damaging that biome? What is, I mean, even just like your skin, right? So like hand sanitizers, and the thing, hand sanitizer to me is like putting Roundup on your plants, on the cracks in the sidewalk, or trying to kill your weeds, because anything that we do, so we're doing it all, we're doing it everywhere, from the soil to us. So we're eating crops, we're eating food that has been grown in depleted soils that have been, basically, I call them kind of like lazy crops, because if you spray the heck out of them, there's no stress on the plant. And so they don't develop as much nutrients. They don't develop the biodiversity of the nutrients that we need. And the phytonutrients, the high levels of cancer fighting nutrients, though that's not as high as an organic plant who's had to fight off fungus, bacteria, other prey, as you say. And so it's so critical to really start to think of our bodies in that same respect. And that, so then we take depleted food, we eat depleted food, and then we take medications and we drink chlorinated water, fluoridated water. We're putting garbage on our skin every day. And then we wonder why we're sick. And then why do we have to have, 10, 20, 30, 40 medications? And then say, there's we don't really know the side effects of herbs, so you should just stay on your medication.
Well, look at vitamin C. Several years ago, they tried to make that where you had to go to your doctor to get a prescription for vitamin C. Guess we wouldn't have been able to buy oranges, right?
Right. Yeah. Well, and the FDA has been trying to, which you've been in this world, the FDA has been attempting. Well, I don't know if that's probably maybe just US, but I don't know if Canadian as well. But they've been attempting to shut down the natural supplements, herbs, all of that. They're trying to shut down that whole industry because it cuts into the profits. And they also recognize that, people, follow the money, baby. Yep. And as humans, we have to be better advocates for ourselves, and not turn a blind eye, and not just assume that when you go to the farmer's market, that head of lettuce or whatever it is was grown organically. Not just assume that it didn't get sprayed to heck because it is sitting in the farmer's market and there's a farmer there. Or oftentimes, a lot of times here, I always ask people when I'm shopping the farmer's markets, where are you from? Did you grow this? Most people will be honest with you and say, I grew this, but my friend down the road grows cherries. And so these cherries came from my friend's farm, but they're organic, or whatever they tell you. So I'm like, it's not that I'm not going to buy cherries from them just because they didn't grow them, but I want to know the story behind it. How are they grown? We've got people at our farmers market they'll say, we have a flower guy, and he goes down to the produce terminal down at Eastern Market and he buys produce. Like, he'll have literally CalOrganic green onions on his table. And he told me one time, he goes, well, I just get this because it attracts people and they think I grew it. And then they buy my flowers. And I was like, got it. Never buying another thing from you ever again. Like, just okay, that's fine. You can be honest, but don't be deceiving,
Yeah.
So, going back to the sand, sorry, I digressed there for a minute.
No problem.
So go back to this. I was like, you just got me thinking about that. So I have very sandy soil.
Okay.
I had no idea. I mean, my mom had a garden. I've been gardening since I've been in my house for 23 years, I guess. And I really just in the last couple of years have been diving more into like soil health and what it means to really, have that kind of health within and how we grow. I've never sprayed or anything like that, but I never thought of sand as a nutrient. I always thought of it as drainage. So that was like, you just enlightened me like big time.
Well, I've got a chart here. Just let me bring it up. I'm going to hit go to present. Oh, of course, I just
do I have to give you permission to present, or can you present?
I just got to get back to it. I'll be able to present, but you'll have to bring it up.
Okay.
So let me do this. Share screen. Share. Okay, so yeah. So that is from a global soil survey of sand. These are the components that are in sand.
Wow. That is amazing.
Okay, so people think sand, they don't want sand, but yes, this is all in your sand. Now, I'm going to freak you out here. This is from a presentation I did quite a while ago, but there's that one there. So this is how many genes are human in the human body. The rest is microbial.
Yeah. Yeah, we are more bug than anything.
It's all about the biology.
When we think about the bugs in our gut and supporting that, it really comes like, I believe we have to think about our mouths. We have to think about our guts. So it starts here. We're chewing gum. We're eating mouthwash. We have poor diets. Our oral health just completely sucks. We're eating food that changes the pH of the oral biome. That finds its way down into the gut. Then the foods from what we're consuming, low quality foods or food like substances, brown foods, right? Breads and
the environment you live in, because 60% comes through your skin.
Yes. Yeah, it's summer, so we're slathering sunscreens on. I'm really, and I think it can become very overwhelming for people to start to embrace a different lifestyle, something that will help move them in the right direction. So, how do you get the needle moving for people when you're having these conversations?
Basically, I talk to them about their gut biology, because most of the people understand that now. 10 years ago, most of us didn't have a clue. But now there's so much more. Activia Yogurt was talking about the biology and the good bacteria. So people have a little bit more of an awareness. And if you can tie that gut biology into the soil biology, then you're moving in the right direction. Now, when I looked at it, I looked at taking it down to that why. I wanted to know why a cell is built the way a cell is built. So it took me quite a while to dig it out because I jumped in the rabbit hole and I ended up with DNA and RNA, and I knew there was something before that. Had to be some foundation, and I found it. It's called the S phase of cell development. At that level, there's only two things that the cell needs to do, and that's when it reaches maturity and it says, I need to divide. It needs to gather all the components. So the calcium, the water molecules, everything that has to go on the outside of that cell. So think of a house. You need your basement, you need your walls, you need your roof, you need your plumbing, you need your electrical. The DNA and RNA, that's just lipstick and mascara. That's, do I want granite countertops, or, do I want, pink walls or shag carpet? I'm not sure, but it has to have all those materials. And then when I looked at it, well, where do those materials come from? Well, it's the biology breaking down for us what we put in our mouths and eat. It's broken down and fed to our biology that builds the cell. And that's the other part, is the biology that builds the cell. So you need the biological, you need the building blocks. The building blocks are created by the biology, transported by the biology through our system to where it's needed to build that heart cell that you want to build. And then it's the biology that they're going, okay, I need to build this, but I also need to build more biology, because the biology runs that heart cell inside of it, makes it function properly. So you need the biology to build the next cell, to gather all the material, bring it all together, and all of a sudden you have a healthy heart cell. Or if the cell doesn't have all those biology, doesn't have all those materials, it can literally sit and wait for a significant amount of time. If it doesn't, you have a rogue cell, an unhealthy cell. So instead of your house being built with 2x6s, it was built with 2x2s, and the first big wind came along and knocked it over. And now you have a problem in your system. This is where, your free radicals become a problem, because the cell wasn't allowed to have all of those materials or the biology that had to come together to make those healthy cells.
So the building blocks is what you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah. And it's so easy in today's world that I think it's 80% here in the US of people are overweight and nutritionally deficient. So it's really sorry, hold on. I was sick a few weeks ago, still coughing. But I think it's especially, and then when I'm sick, right, pouring into, I keep saying, like, it's constant fueling of the system, So whether it's just a random cold like I have or had, or it's you have chronic allergies, maybe you're affected by the cottonwoods or whatever's flying today. Maybe you have an autoimmune issue, or some kind of gut issue. If you're not having bowel movements every day, like ding, 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 you have got to pay attention. There is an issue. And, we talk about for hormones, women's health, men's health, if you don't have a sex drive, a lot of my patients will say, I don't have a desire to have sex anyway. I'm like, that's not the point. Something is wrong in your foundation. Something's not driving your metabolic state to where it needs to be. It's not recovering properly. It's not healing. It can't give you the function that you need for everything to just drive you as a human. Like your tank is half empty right now, and you think it's okay. And so trying to get more people to have that level of awareness is, like you said, 10 years ago, the gut microbiome we didn't have these conversations. Well, I was having the conversation,
Yep.
banging my head against the wall 20 years ago, trying to be like, no, you guys, like, I'm telling you, there's this thing called the gut brain connection and you have to pay attention to it. And now it's like everywhere. And I'm like, I've been talking about this for 20 years. Come on. So, and I know, I don't know if you know Howie from Foodforest Permaculture. He and I always, if I'm in his chat or if he's in my live chat, we're talking about gardening or something, or like, I don't wash my plant, if I pick something off the plant to eat it, I might just wipe it a little, but I eat it. I want the biome that came from that soil, that came from the earth. And because that creates greater diversity within me, it's that cycle that you're talking about.
Yep.
And most of us are walking around with a gut that is similar to my neighbor down the street who wants to kill everything off of his lawn except for the Kentucky bluegrass or whatever it is that he wants to grow. And we can't do that. We need this diversity for our overall health. It's like putting your eggs in one basket. You're not going to be able to fight the good fight in the long run if you don't have a multitude, your trillions, right? Our trillions of bugs, respect the fact that we're just a tiny bit of human.
Yep.
Right?
Yep, exactly. Well, and the worst thing is, when I started this journey, I found that a lot of people were talking about a biological collapse. Now, I've had one in my grow, and I went to bed. The plant was beautiful. I got up in the morning, checked, and the plant was dead. And that's a complete biological collapse that just, bam, your plant's dead. Well,
what happened? Did you figure it out?
The biology collapsed that was growing the plant. I had overwatered it. I created what's called an anaerobic zone, and the bad biology got in there and it just wiped the plant out.
Dang.
But in that instant, that's what we're approaching on our planet on a global level because of all the pesticides and herbicides we've been using, killing the biology that's in our soils. We can only push it so far. And then just like our human bodies, we can only push so far before they just break down and collapse. And that's where we've got, not a lot of time to get these messages out, to have people understand that guy down the road that's spraying everything and killing everything, not only is he killing himself, but he's killing everybody else around him because he's killing that biology.
Yeah. And I've talked about this on this channel before. I have a patient who has a 4-year-old that I treat the whole family, but I'm working with the 4-year-old on nutrition because he's really, he's hyperactive in a, and his mom's like, there's some, he's not been vaccinated, so that's good. But, but his mom knew like something was wrong. What can we do on this? He gets sick a lot, that kind of thing. So we tested him and he's toxic in glyphosate. So he's like, it should be 0, but and it was through urine. It was 80% glyphosate Roundup toxicity, right? So I tell the mom, I'm like, okay, we got to get some chelation on deck. We got to do all these things. So she's mad because she goes, oh my gosh, we eat all organic. We raise our own chickens. I had the healthiest pregnancy. I was super good about my diet. Like, she goes, I don't let them eat junk. And I said, the unfortunate part, and this is to your point about how much time do we have to get these messages out, is I said, the unfortunate part is if I tested you, it probably came from you, because it does not leave the system. These toxic chemicals that we're using like willy-nilly. You go into Home Depot and you can get yourself some Roundup with no problem and come home and spray it all over and not even think twice about the fact that you are using a highly toxic chemical that is killing you slowly, or maybe quicker. I don't know. But this is what we need to think of, is the next generation. If we don't stop this nonsense now and start really diving further into what does it mean to have healthy plants, healthy soil, healthy animals, healthy humans.
Yeah.
So,
And it's a synergistic relationship between all of it. Without the healthy soil and the healthy worms in the soil and the healthy birds that fly through the sky, the healthy animals, the healthy grass, everything, if it's not healthy, that's why when people get bugs in their garden, that's the bugs going, this isn't healthy. I'm going to break it down, mulch it up, return it to the soil so the next generation can be healthy. But we eat that. And we
yeah,
like, I love organic and organic farming. Unfortunately, it's been co-opted by the chemical companies because a lot of the organic amendments have unorganic methodology, I guess, may be the better thing, because this is found in nature, so it's organic. But if you combine those two organic compounds, oh geez, there's a big skull and crossbones on there.
yeah, yeah. That's frightening. And I think too, that's where,
Hey, super.
yeah. So, and I love this comment. You have to think 7 generations ahead, and that is true. It
Yeah.
really does. And this is so, when we talk about, oh gosh, I don't know how far down the rabbit hole I want to go at the moment, but I don't like climate change, the move to all electric. I'm like, you guys, it's hogwash. Like, really, like we are creating the climate change by not respecting the fact that we have to stop using all these chemicals and pesticides. And it is not cow burps or cow farts. I promise you. And we do not
No.
need to be killing cows. And I'm always like, let's think about, like, I could Google it right now, but go Google how many space launches, is it SpaceX or whatever, Elon
SpaceX,
Musk. Yeah, go Google how many launches have taken place this year. It's literally like 1 to 2 a week. You don't think all of that going into the sky is affecting what's coming back down and going into the soil and coming into us?
Just think of the volcanoes that are around the world that pump out trillions of tons of CO2. If you really want to know, the Inuit, I don't know, that's our Arctic inhabitants. We used to call them Eskimos, but they're called the Inuit. They sent an open letter to NASA saying, guys, like, look, the ice caps, they haven't melted. They've shifted, and we're getting more hours of daylight than we ever have before. Global warming, yes, is a total made up money machine. And I remember, it was, we were going to freeze, then we were going to cook, then we were going to freeze. It's a cylindrical cycle of our sun. I've been following it for decades. Look at the Schumann resonance. Look at what happens when a solar flare interacts with our magnetosphere, and how things are moving. They're finding forever chemicals at the poles where there's never been any farming, because it's in our air that we breathe, and it's in killing that biology that it breaks down and breaks down. And we got to remember that predator prey can only take out so much of the prey species before the predators are all going to die. And it's just a collapse. The dominoes just start to go ting, ting, ting.
Yeah. I didn't realize that about the polar ice caps. And you're right. It's like, I think this is also where I was talking with Dr. Sina McCullough. She's going to be on the show. She works very closely with Joel Salatin. He's a farmer down in Virginia, and they have a podcast called Beyond Labels Podcast. But she's going to be on here too. We're going to talk about what's going in our food, into our food system, how things are grown, what we don't know. She's a researcher, so she'll dive further deep in that. But she and I both had this agreement too, that when we have these conversations, there's only so much bandwidth that let me try to say this. You have to pay attention, and you have to make a change, and you have to make a shift. And however, I understand it can get really overwhelming, and you can think there's an apocalypse coming, and that's where I'm like, okay, I have to just live. I'm going to live day to day now. There's, kind of just bless your path that you're going on and just try to make better choices from day to day, because it can get scary and overwhelming, and, we're all going to die, and there's going to, whatever they're going to put in our air, but controlling what we can control is really important. So if you are, if you can grow some of your own food, or if somebody in your neighborhood grows food, get with that person, and maybe there's, you create a neighborhood co-op, or you're shopping at the farmers markets and supporting local, preserving your own foods, making sure you're getting the proper life cycle and biology from what you're ingesting, and then of course being aware of what you're doing to yourself, get rid of the fluoridated water and all of that. So go ahead.
I was gonna say, we can only do so much as an individual, and like I told my wife when all this craziness was starting to happen around the world, I said, honey, observe it, don't absorb it. You don't need to absorb the craziness. We can only do what we can do. So as long as we stay positive, happy, healthy, and that's what we give to everybody that's around us, that's what we can do. And don't worry about everything else that is happening out there, because we can't control that part of it.
Yeah. So there you go. You just dropped the freaking mic on that one. That's a great statement. And I never thought of it like that. Observe it, don't absorb it. Because it's easy to, isn't it? When we think
get
about
caught up in it all.
Yeah. Yeah. So we mentioned when we were talking offline, and I asked, were you growing your own vegetables? What do? You garden? And you had mentioned that you're mostly like keto carnivore.
Yep.
So talk to me about that. Like how did you evolve to that? Like how's your health been with that type of a eating lifestyle?
Actually quite a bit better. We found out when I was about 6 or 7 years old that I was allergic to a lot of the preservatives that they had started putting in the foods back then. So I've always eaten, my mother canned. We ate moose generally, not so much deer. None of us really liked the flavor of deer, but we ate a lot of elk and moose. So I grew up, not going to the grocery store for my food. And now when I started to really research, how the components that a cell needs, I realized I'm not green. There's nothing green inside of me. Now, are there benefits to eating some vegetables? Yes, but there's also harm in eating vegetables. They actually produce a toxin that when you consume them, you're taking in that toxin. But the cow that consumes it with the 4 stomachs can break it down and repurpose it. And I want to use the term for canning. Oh, geez, I'm having a brain fart. Sauerkraut.
Fermentation.
Fermentation. Thank you.
Yeah.
That's where when we consume fermented foods, that's already been broken down by the biologies, the molecules have been started being pulled apart. That's what's happening in the cow's gut. When the cow processes that and they put it into their muscle, we're getting all the benefits from what they ate. As long as they have healthy grass and grains, we get that. And those are the compounds our bodies need more than the green. Like when I'm teaching somebody about, feeding their plants, I tell them feed plants. Those are the molecules that plants need. Those aren't the molecules necessarily that I need in that way. We can get protein from plants, but it's a lot harder for our biology, our gut microbiome, to break that down, convert that into something our physical form can use easier, unless, of course, it is already broken down with fermentation. But the meat that I put in is an exact chemical match that's already been broken down out of the grass, etc., made into this. So it's so much easier for my biology to break down and stitch my cells together. So I've lost weight, I have better muscle tone, etc. And my biggest problem is I have a love of jelly beans. And so I, go off, but the wife and I were doing quite a bit better. But we all have that moment to moment, what's best for us, what's best for our situation. But the better and more, nutrient dense you can make the components you're feeding to yourself, the easier your body has to make those healthy cells. Like, I would suggest, Paula, that you really take and get some beef broth and consume a bunch of beef broth. That will help you recover. We talk about the different particle sizes of components for our soils. So we have ground up organic material, mineral associated material, and now they're starting to talk about dissolved materials. So dissolved in the water column, the molecules are already broken down at such a small rate. It's so much easier for the plants to process that, to bring it into their cells. And a beef stock for you is so much easier for your biology to break down, make those white blood cells that'll go out and kick butt on that cough you got.
Well, interesting that you said that, because when I went to Florida, it was probably a couple 3 months ago now. And when I came back, I got sick. And all I could think about when I was down there, it started like with some weird digestive thing. And I don't normally get sick, and I don't normally have digestive issues. But all I could think about when I was down there was, as soon as I get home, I'm going to make some broth. And I do my broth with chicken and chicken feet, so I get all that collagen.
Yep.
So I came home and I made a gigantic pot of broth, drank it. I was making enough broth. I was making broth weekly, and I drank a couple cups every day for probably 3 weeks. It really is what pulled me through. Yep. And so the funny thing that you, as I'm sitting here, the only time it triggers is when I'm Sunday nights, when I'm sitting here doing my show, and I forget that I still have this dang cough. And I literally was like, oh my God, I need to make more broth. And you said that, and I'm like, oh my God, you're so spot on. Because I don't, now we'll hang up from here, and I'll be like, oh yeah, I'll forget about it, because I won't cough again until I start talking to patients tomorrow. And then it'll be like a couple coughs here and there. And yeah, so you are correct. I'm a huge advocate for like any kind of bone broth, whether it's beef or chicken, however you want to make it. But and I throw I'll throw like a half a butternut squash in there, and a ton of garlic and tons of onions, and oh yeah, it's really good. But
how do you feel about salt?
I love salt.
Okay, thank you.
I'm a saltaholic. I'm looking on the table here. I have these little mini salts that I always carry with me everywhere I go. What? Yes, yes. Always, everywhere, always. I salt everything. And my family, my one brother, my oldest brother, he'll be like, "You're gonna get high blood pressure," and I'm like, I'm the only one in this family not on medication, so no, I'm not going to.
What's the first thing a farmer puts out in the field for his cows? A salt lick,
Salt
because they'll
lick.
die
Yes.
without it.
Yes, exactly. Like, we need those minerals, and we need to get away from the iodized salt, the stripped down version, and the bleached. And again, it's just another chemical, right? And it doesn't that chart that you pulled up of all the sand, I mean, the all the minerals that were in that soil, it's like that's when you eat salt, so, sodium chloride, it's just one. You just, or well, sodium and chloride, but you stripped away all the beneficial synergistic molecules that are required for it to metabolize properly. And when you're talking about eating, keto carnivore, this is my argument for vegans, vegetarians. I've had so many unhealthy vegans and vegetarians. I don't think I've had one patient over my 26 years who has claimed to be vegan or vegetarian that has actually been healthy. And you guys, you can't do it. So I don't know where the disruption comes in, or where the, I'm going to eat animals. I'm not going to eat animals because it's cruel to animals. You're human. Like, this is like, you're going to go out in the wild and tell a lion it can't take down a gazelle. Like, this is how mammals get all their nutrients. And that lion's going to eat every single part of that gazelle because it's going to get all the nutrients. And that gazelle was eating grass, and that's how they get, like, this is how humans have evolved. So we can't, protein and animal products have a lot of cofactors that are shuttled along with protein that you cannot get from a protein molecule in lettuce. It's just biologically not possible. So
well, it's just like there's different salts. Like I have the pink Himalayan here. There's the Celtic, which is excellent. Then there's C90, and that's talking about the 90, I think it's 97 trace minerals that it has in the salt itself.
Yeah.
Also, you have to consider when you're drinking water, if you put a little bit of salt in that water, it actually absorbs into your cells that much faster because it combines and is drawn in. So it helps to hydrate you as well. Just as it's that little bit, not a lot, because you can't drink salt water.
You're right. Yeah. And that's why I tell people, just tiny pinch in I've got a big water bottle that I always carry around with me. Tiny pinch, shake it. And then I put vitamin C in there as well. And that's what I'll drink before I go to the gym, or if I'm going to go biking or something like that, because I want that pre-hydration for sure. So, and also make sure you're drinking it slowly over time. So, any of those nutrients that if you just shoot it, it's going to saturate your cells and you pee out the rest. But if you drink it slowly, then you can, you get a slow infusion, like you're saying, to into your cells, which is, far more beneficial for you. So
I will say there are 5% of humanity whose bodies are designed to be vegan, but only 5%, 95% of the rest of us, we cannot be healthy eating just vegetables like that.
So where does that come from, Ken? I don't doubt that. I'm curious. Why?
Why? It would be genetics. It would be their specific genetics that has adapted their mix of biology to not be affected by the poisons in those plants that normal people would be. They think, what I've heard is they have more of a reptilian DNA, a little bit of a change in their genetic makeup that allows them to remain healthy on that kind of a diet.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I don't doubt that. So I will retract. I shouldn't make a blanket statement about that, but I think in general, like you're saying, some people can handle it there, and that's fine. But to your point, the majority of people,
I've seen a lot of really, really unhealthy vegans, and my heart goes out to those people believing that, that they're not, wanting to eat the animal because of animal cruelty, yet you're ripping up that lettuce plant. That lettuce plant is alive. It's been shown now that plants have a better sensory perception than a human being does. They see things more clearly than us. If I go out in my garden, I'm wearing this blue shirt, the plant actually sees a blue shirt because everything is in a waveform. Color is a waveform, and they see in waveforms. Our sunlight is a waveform in different nanometers of intensity, and in that, the plant can only use so much sunlight that it draws energy from that sun, and it sees things we don't see. It has, like, they're now, doing photography that shows the auric field, or the energy field around a plant, the same as it is around a human, around an animal. So if you think as a vegan that you're not consuming animals, you're consuming the biology that exists in there. Same with the biology that exists in the meat, the plant. It doesn't matter. The fish, it's all the same thing. You can't get away with not consuming the animals, because biology are very, very small animals. And in everything on this planet that is alive, that biology is there that built the cells of that plant. It's no different than the cells of the animal.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I'll have to look that up about the auric fields on the plants. It's fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
My mom. So, do you remember Jerry Baker from back in the 70s and 80s? He was America's master gardener. Well, okay, so U.S. He was America's. Sorry, he was America's master gardener. He was on the radio every Saturday here. My mom had books from him, and he. This is how my mom got into gardening, because he had his grandma Putt was her name, and he used all these tonics and tinctures made from food, onions, garlic, jalapenos, whatever. But he had a book called, and he said, plants are people too. And my mom would make me go around the house and talk to the plants because she swore it helped them grow better.
And it does.
Yeah, I know. So I'm like, and then that also goes to, I always forget his name, the Japanese scientist who did the water experiment.
Yamamoto.
Yes. And talk about biology there, where, you have water that you've talked to kindly and nicely that looks like beautiful snowflakes. And then what you treated poorly is like shards of glass. Like, it's fascinating. So we can't dismiss this by any means.
Well, have you ever walked into a room where people were arguing and it's like, whoa, it's like, I don't think I want to be here. That's the energy. That's the frequency. That's the vibration. That if you go into a grow, and they find this a lot in the cannabis grows, there people were coming in grumpy and they weren't having good success in their gardens where they had people that were always happy and bubbly. Their plants responded and were beautiful. It's, just people don't want to admit that we've been lied to. If you've ever watched the movie Avatar and their connection to their planet, that's more the connection that we're supposed to have with everything that's around us. You're muted.
Thank you. Sorry, that last cough got me. There is a beautiful synergy in the life cycle that we're living with plants and animals. And I wanted to go back real quick. Your wife brought up about water. Most people don't think they're dehydrated when we were talking about going back to the salt. And she said, but they drink loads of water and they're still dehydrated unless there's salt. The water's not absorbed into the cell. I actually did one of my videos was on this. I did 2 videos in the probably past week or 2 weeks on dehydration, this very thing in dehydration, and that most people, because of their inflammatory lifestyle, their cells are dehydrated, shriveled up like they should be plump like grapes. They're shriveled up like raisins, and they're inflamed on the outside of the cell. So they're both. So most people are walking around inflamed and dehydrated all at the same time. And when you that's a sign that your body is trying to flush out toxins, because your body needs that fluid to deactivate the toxic element in order to get it safely out of the body. So yeah, it's so true, Silly Lily, that we have, most people are dehydrated, but they're also inflamed at the same time, because their cells, the biology of their cells is like complete garbage. So,
if you want to know more about water, research Gerald Pollock, The Fourth Phase of Water. We've actually had him on our podcast a couple of times. There's so much more to water and the water molecule than we ever thought in a million years, that is just going to blow your mind.
And, you know, I think I first heard him on the Wise Traditions podcast. And I was like, what is it? I was so, it was so complex. I listened to it, and then I heard him again. And so, but I keep going and listening to him, and now I'm starting to get it. And I'm like, oh, this makes so much sense. But it's fascinating, and it's, you know, I don't necessarily know how new of a concept, but is it going to be like the gut-brain connection, that we could talk about the fourth phase of water today, and yet people won't get it for another 10 or 20 years?
Well, it came out quite a while ago, but it's the research that is just so amazing on what he's found out about how clouds stay in the sky. You know, people don't realize that a lot of it has to do with the biology. Pseudomonas moringae, I think, is the bacteria that exists in our air, in our water, and in our soils, and in ice. So in all four of the spheres or domains on our planet, and it's that actually grabs water molecules, puts those all together, and creates rain where we wouldn't have rain otherwise. And that's caused by biology, not by anything else. It's crazy.
Yeah, it is fascinating. I was in Whole Foods. I was buying a sparkling mineral water, and in a bottle, and but I saw this new sparkling mineral water, and it said from rainwater, and I was like, I'm not buying that. Like, I'm not drinking rainwater. Are you kidding me? Like, what? I mean, unless somebody can help me understand otherwise, that, you know, but I'm like, yeah, no thanks. Yeah.
Well, rainwater is very iodized because it's went through the atmosphere, but I wouldn't. Yeah, it depends on if it's coming out of Alaska, it might not be too bad. But there's very few places on our planet where it's going to rain that I would ever want to drink the rainwater without purifying it first.
Yeah, I wanted to actually look it up to see how are they purifying it, because it's a little bit of a concern, right? So, you know, so well, we're on like almost an hour and a half, Ken. Usually we go about an hour, and but this was so fascinating. And I fear I'm going to continue to cough if I keep going, but I do want to say thank you so much. This has been so enlightening, and I need to have you on again, because I feel like we only scratched the surface. So would you do me the honors and come back on?
I would love to. Anytime that you would like to have me on, I'm always willing to talk.
Perfect. Okay. And you know what? You are like, I love listening to you. What you say, how you present it, fascinating and enlightening. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. I hope everybody has also enjoyed this conversation. So I'm actually going to be on Ken's show. I believe we have ourselves scheduled for August 2nd. That's Friday.
Yes, ma'am.
Right?
Yep. In 2 weeks. 2 weeks.
2 weeks. Perfect. So I will be looking forward to that. And then we have Reset Monday tomorrow. That's a show that I do every Monday. It's about 15 minutes, just about getting back on track, staying on track. You know, a lot of times we can derail from the weekend. And so we want to just take those small baby steps. Take, if there, you know, if there's one thing that one takeaway that Ken had to offer today, then grab that and go forward with it. You know, don't, what was it? Don't observe, don't absorb.
Yep.
That's my big takeaway today. I love it. So, anything else you want to share before we sign off?
Well, I'll let you know on my channel. We have Leighton Morrison on with Alex IMAS tomorrow. He's developed a system for watering that's really, really phenomenal for anybody that's doing indoor, outdoor, etc. Then, of course, Andy Lopez, myself on Wednesday. Then I've got Hillbilly Herb Chicken Ranch on Friday. And then I'm being interviewed again by Jane from Jane's Homesteading on Friday afternoon as well. Other than that, thank you so much, Paula, for having me. It was a pleasure being here.
You're welcome, Ken. This is amazing. So, all right, you guys, have an amazing week. And remember, it's all about the biology. So take care of yourselves. Okay. See you guys.